This is counseling tonight. We have until 7:05 or so, the first part of our class. Then we have a break. And we have Pastor Lange coming in and teaching us on marriage counseling. So, boy, are we in trouble tonight or what? Okay, let's start up by being lighthearted, making a few jokes, and laughing a little bit. Okay? Go ahead. How important is our joy? It's our strength, and also in His presence is fullness of joy, correct? In Psalm 16. How many of you kind of don't have joy? You can be honest with me. Like, it's borderline. Okay? We have joy. Maybe it's not a big smile, but we have strength. We have the Holy Spirit in us. And yeah, we can be honest sometimes if we are tired. There's Romans 8:11. God recognizes that we can be weak and tired. And in our 2 Corinthians chapter 12, we could even have a thorn in our side. Does anybody have one of those? Pardon, Pastor Simon? He has several of them. What? And thorn in my side. And what do I do when I have that? What? Pull it out. I ask God to remove it. What does God say? Yeah. And how many times did Paul pray? 3 times. Then the Lord answered. Why didn't he answer after once? Maybe he wanted to know if Paul's really serious about it. Paul prayed again and again. All right, so our class tonight is on hope, on instilling hope in the counselee. Remember, we have these words, counselor, right? Counselor, counselee, and the counsel. And we drew a simple picture like this with the counselor being a spirit-filled doctrinal believer. And he has a personal walk with God. And God has given him wisdom. Was it hard for him to find wisdom? Do you remember Job 28? Where can wisdom be found? James chapter 3. We have 2 wisdoms, the wisdom from below and the wisdom from above. And the wisdom that comes from God, there's a requirement. What is it? For the wisdom that comes from God. What? Okay, what's the requirement to get that wisdom? You're gonna laugh when I tell you. You've heard it so many times. This is entertaining for me right now. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay. The counselor has the wisdom, and he gains it by the fear of God. And in that, he knows he doesn't have the answer for all problems. And he knows that he has knowledge, but he has a great attitude about knowledge. What is that? 1 Corinthians 8:2. In verse 3, 1, 2, and 3. What is that? He has knowledge, and what does he think about it? Okay, if we think we know, we don't know as we ought to. And what is it that how is it we should know? Let's turn there, read that. 1 Corinthians 8, 1 and 2 and 3. Look at part B of verse 1. Knowledge, what does it do? Puffs up, but charity. What's the word charity? Love. It edifies. Love edifies. And if any man thinks that he knows anything, he knows nothing. As he ought to know. It's like this. I know I can have a lot of knowledge, but what I know is that I don't know how to apply it. I know this, that I need God to give me the application of wisdom. Like, for example, I could know that I need a loaf of bread tomorrow. I could know this. Tomorrow I need a loaf of bread. So I have the knowledge. But how do I apply the knowledge in life? What would be one way I would apply that knowledge in my life? I need bread tomorrow, so I will go to the store today and buy some bread. So because I have knowledge doesn't mean that I know as I ought to know. You know, there are a lot of smart people and they have a lot of knowledge, but it doesn't mean that they know how to live. How do they use the knowledge that they have? And this is a real gift to you, and you have it because of the fear of God being the criteria for gaining wisdom. And wisdom is really important in counseling because first we spoke about the counselor and then the counselee. And I want to read to you something here. And the relationship with the counselor and the counselee, the counsel, and we're going to look at the Apostle Paul and the churches. I think this relationship with Paul and the churches is a good reference for us regarding godly counsel. Paul was a great counselor, and he was a great counselor to the churches. And the spirit that he had for the church and the wisdom that he had that would help them when it would have been easy to react or mislead them or not hit the real target that needs to be hit in life. Okay, so I don't want to get ahead, and I want to keep this congruent, so I'm wondering what I should do right now. Now you're entertained? Good. Let's, why not you do a little bit of work here? Here's the counselor. Here's the counselee. And here's the idea, very simply, hope. Here is a good example. Clara comes to you stating that she filed for divorce on the grounds of mental and bodily cruelty. Clara comes to the counseling session and she said, I tried to get him here, but he had other things to do. You know what his other things are, of course. I told you all of them. Then you as a counselor say, I don't want to hear charges against Marty, that's her husband, behind his back. This hostility toward him that you have, even though you told him you forgave him, seems to indicate that you made little or no attempt to bury the issue and start over. I don't think that you understand forgiveness. She says, forgive him. You know there's a limit. After he has beat me, his drinking, he has spent our money. When I came home and found him in bed with another woman, I can never bury that. He's just an immature, immoral, animalistic pig, she says. Then the counselor says, it will be necessary for her to change her language about her husband, in that you are here to help but not to solve her self-righteous attitude, and listen to her ever-increasing charges against her husband. Why are you siding with him, she says. I'm the one that belongs to this church. And then she breaks into tears. What is wrong with the counselor's, his whole demeanor towards this woman, who is a hurting woman with very real problems? Yeah, Robin? Okay, he's condemning. Okay. Anything else? Yes. He has no compassion. Yeah. He doesn't have compassion. Very good. Yes, Sam?
Shouldn't he be calling the police?
Sam said, shouldn't the counselor be calling the police? Yeah. That's a very good point. There's a mandatory, what's that word? What is it? Reporting, yeah. Mandatory, I think that is the word. Mandatory reporting in some cases. But with a pastor, there's a pastoral privilege, and it is not mandatory. Only if there is a school and there is a report of child abuse, that is mandatory reporting, even though the school is associated with a church. But there are certain laws on that, and that's a good point. We should really know those and go over them. I know a little bit about it, but that's a good point. I would say no, because there's another point that I want to make in the class. So let's not cut the counseling session short by putting him in jail. Yes.
He's kind of just addressing the symptoms rather than the heart issue.
Okay. Yeah, change your language. I can't hear these things when he is not here, which is another good point in marriage counseling. It's best that both of them are there. But it can be in the degree that one refuses to go to counseling. And then as a counselor, you need to decide. As a pastor, I don't do it. They can go to a counselor, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want to hear one side. I would like them both to be there. So a pastor, this is a good point too, has to decide what is he going to do when it comes to counseling, marriage counseling in the church, and what are the rules for that? How does he want to do it? Okay, but let's go to something deeper here. She has problems, and really you can sympathize with all of her problems with her husband. And he, the counselor, has to have it in his mind, or her mind, that what I would like to see happen, whether the problems are solved or not, I would like this person to have hope. And hope is a spiritual word, and it affects people. It actually is a work of God in the heart of a person where they are refreshed and encouraged in that deep part, or what we call the inner man. And this is the heart of the person who is born again, and they have the Holy Spirit living in them, and they have the capacity for hope. Hope is that horizontal sense. Faith is the vertical, and love is the nature of God. And when you put God in a situation, then God is going to impart himself in the situation. The marriage may not succeed, but the person can still have hope, because this is the nature of God in the world, isn't it? That God is a God that is never failing. 1 Corinthians 13, we read that. And he is not condemning. This is Romans chapter 8 and verse 1. Hope is Romans 5:5 in the heart, and is shed abroad in our hearts. But you could easily say, how could this woman that is hurting so much and has real problems in her marriage, how could she ever have hope? And this is where the counselor needs the skill of a spiritual ministry to the person. A spiritual ministry is able to bring hope, to the heart of a person. I wouldn't say always, and I wouldn't want to say it ideally, but it is true that God, when God comes to a person, this is one effect that he has on the person. We can say when Jesus Christ, when he is there and he ministers, when he has the connection with a believer, this is what is imparted. The person is refreshed, encouraged, mystically realizes God is loving me and he's touching me in my heart, in my spirit. God is here, and I am walking out of this office. I still have the same problems. My husband is still a huge problem for me in my life, but somehow I feel refreshed by God in my heart and in my way of thinking. I might not have a lot of hope for my marriage, but I have hope in my heart. Maybe God will do it in my marriage, maybe not. Now, here's a few things to say about this. False hope. This is there's a number of things to say about this. That the counselor does not communicate those things that he doesn't really know about. The things that he cannot really promise, the things that he cannot guarantee. It's not a false hope. Like, what would be a false hope I, as a counselor, could communicate to somebody who has a problem? Everything's gonna be all right. This reminds me of a song. Okay, everything's gonna be all right. Now, I might want to hear that, but, it gets kind of old after a couple days or weeks, and things just aren't all right, right? Okay, so I cannot give a promise when I don't really know. Like a man leaves his wife and she's gone. There's a case like that in our church, and The woman shared with me, my husband is gone. I have no idea where he is. I haven't seen him or heard from him for many months. He's abandoned me. I can't believe it. We've been married for whatever it was, 27 years. He disappeared. No phone call, nothing. Okay? So now here you are. What is it you're tempted to say? He'll be back. What else? Move on. Okay, that's, I'm really tempted to. No, yeah. MoveOn.com. All right. So. There are little things that people think about that when they're in trouble, they say a verse a day, a Bible verse a day keeps the devil away. A verse a day keeps the devil away. Okay? This is like an idea from, in Christianity, we make up these ideas and we actually have hope based on these little practices and ideas that we have as people. If I go to the church, if I read my Bible every day, if I say my prayers. How about a man that would say he has a problem with some addiction and he'll say, I prayed and it hasn't gone away. Okay? I am disappointed. I have not found. And so there you have a counselor with a counselee, and he has lost, it's hope deferred makes the heart sick. Yes, sir. Sure. Thicker? This one, okay. Thanks for being so bold. Can't believe you. Came right up here like that. Took right over. Okay, hope deferred makes, the heart sick. Anybody know where it is? No kidding. Okay. It's in Proverbs. Hey, we're just starting Bible school, so hey, we're like we said, it's in the Bible. Okay, so hope deferred makes the heart sick. False hope and counsel. And when people come to us, we have to realize that there is a lot of immaturity in people's expectations in life. It can be very devastating when I have lost. Yes? Thank you. Proverbs 13:12. Great. Kaylin, thank you. Give her a free coffee at the break. Okay. There is a lot of room in the immaturity that we all have as believers. And it's very important for me to get the right, to be guided and counseled with some depth. And the counselor is usually somebody who has walked through and lived life with a living hope. This is what Jesus is called. Is it 1 Timothy 1:1? Jesus is a living hope. And the sound doctrine, this is the healthy doctrine that we read about, that Paul was very concerned that Titus and Timothy would be teaching sound doctrine, really healthy Bible doctrine. And that by this, then, we would become able counselors. Now, look at this picture. I've got the thick font now, but we've got people talking to people all the time. People giving counsel. What did we say? Most counsel happens between who? Friends. This is where most counsel happens. It's friends. It's not an official counseling session, but most of it happens. And with us, when we have body life, we have a lot of friends. And we warned, there's a warning here, and this is, do not be quick to speak. This is James chapter, is it 3:1, James chapter 1. Be swift to hear. There's a 21, 23. Also be a doer of the word, verse 25 and 27. Keep yourself unspotted from the world. It's a great portion. Warning is what? Job's 3 friends. Yappity yap, yap, yap. Giving their opinion and talking a lot. Were they anointed in their speech? No. Did they talk a lot? Chapter after chapter after chapter. Was it really bad counsel? Not really. A lot of it was just practical, and a lot of it was just normal, understandable talk. But behind it, they were blaming Job for his trouble. That was the big problem that God had with these 3 counselors. So instead of being a counselor that is really not wise, we look for churches that are filled with people that have this ministry of helping people, and often without knowing about their problems. And this is the counselor, and there's a description, Colossians chapter 3, 15 and 16. Let's turn and read that. Were you listening? I know you're listening, but have you lost interest? Did you just fade away for a moment? Are you there? Hey. Huh? Are you? Talk to me. What? Pastor Ronaldo is here. Hold it. Wow. Right, fresh from Africa. Pastor Taro. Now, wait a minute. Who is he? Pastor Taro. Have you seen him on YouTube? Have you seen him in the Northland in Finland? Anybody? He's right there with Jarmo. Right there next to him. Wow, isn't that awesome? Okay. Great to have you, really. Colossians 3, verse 15. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to the which also you are called in one body. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. How much? What is the word of Christ? I mean, it is rich. It dwells in us richly. What is it? It is the Bible, the word of Christ. How much Bible do I know? If it dwells in me richly, it means in a large measure. I have a lot of the Bible. I hide it in my heart, okay? Verse 16. In all wisdom, not only do we know the Bible, a lot of the Bible, and we're learning the Bible in Bible school, memorizing it, meditating on the Bible, writing it on our windshield. I did that the other day with a not the Sharpie, but the washable one. And I went around my car and I wrote Bible verses on it. My wife was saying, "Are you okay?" I go, "Yes." Okay, teaching and admonishing one another. The word admonishing, putting in the mind. This is a great ministry, to put in the mind words, to be touching another life. Because in the believer here is something new that was not there before, and this is Hebrews 4, verse 12. The Word of God is quick, living, powerful, sharp than a two-edged sword, piercing to the dividing asunder soul and spirit, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intentions of my heart. The Word is where this person finds real hope in contradiction to false hope. And it's imparted by the counselor. And he has to learn how to do it. He learns how to minister to somebody so that, just like this case with this woman and her husband being a great disappointment to her, and she goes to the counselor, and the counselor is able to talk to her and to build her up, to impart to her, to give her understanding, to teach her God's plan, to impart to her something that she didn't have before. If I was this counselor listening to this woman, I would just be so disappointed with this man's life if what she's saying to me is true about her husband. I would say, wow, this is a big problem. I mean, who's going to counsel me now? I need help. This is a disaster. I'm so sad. I'm so sorry about it. There is no hope. It's over. We both, just in depression. I mean, I could see hearing problems, the death of a child, abandonment in a marriage, addictions, stealing money, all kinds of problems that people have and things that people do, and then listening to this, and then just what do I say? What am I going to do for these people? Well, how can I help them? What is the point? What is the angle that I take? All right, hold it right there. I got your attention. And then we hit the point. Okay, here it is. Paul and the churches. How did he minister to the churches? What did he do, really? Here's the churches. And tell me some of the problems the churches had. You can just say it out loud. Gossip, idolatry, pride, immorality, fornication, idolatry, hypocrisy, judgmental, didn't like Paul. Some Corinthians, there was a party that didn't like Paul. So what is he going to do? You know what I'm saying. He's going to say, okay, adios. I did a lot for you guys. I showed up. I was a missionary. I laid down my life for you. I served you. I walked with you. I taught you. And now you're going to treat me like this? You are such a disappointment to me. Let's put the church right on that stool. You are such a disappointment to me. I can't believe you behave like that. You talk like that, you act like that, and you have that attitude towards me. I'm going to tell you what I think of you. Okay? Would it be possible? But why was he different from that? Because he knew that hope is from God, and that hope is really what everyone needs. Hope is a spiritual characteristic in the human life that comes from the Holy Spirit in our troubles. And you can be a helper of their joy, 2 Corinthians 1:24. I do not have dominion over your faith, but I can be a helper of your joy. And it really takes you and I to hear from God, because I'll tell you, I can get very angry when I hear about things and also very disappointed. But I have to come back with God's mind. I have to come back to the situation with grace. I have to come back with faith, and I have to come back and say, okay, Clara, let's go to Clara. Well, we'll go to her in a minute, but let's go to the couple of places where we have the church. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12. Oh, it's fun to be with you guys here tonight. Man, woo, it's good. Chapter 3, verse 12. Seeing that we have such hope, we have great plainness of speech. What hope? This glory of God. Paul, what are you talking about? The glory of God to the Corinthians. The Corinthians are a huge disappointment, aren't they? Yes, humanly speaking. But inside, those Corinthians, let's do it this way. It doesn't work. Okay. Inside those Corinthians is Christ. And I'm going to feed this person. And I'm going to minister to them because I have that ability. And you're to develop that ability in your life, in Bible school, and your way of thinking. I don't mean that we are naive. I just mean that we approach the counselee as somebody made in God's image, somebody who is saved and who has the potential, but is usually very emotional. Usually they're very upset. And we understand that they are, they have real problems, and I need to have a few things. Number one, compassion. Do a compassion study on Jesus. We have two people we could study in our New Testament. Jesus' compassion and Paul's compassion. Wow. I love the word compassion. And people need compassion. I think in the story that we read, Clara didn't get compassion from the counselor. But really, the counselor was too rough, didn't identify, wasn't caring. And it goes like this. My body language and my listening to them I'm expressing to them in some measure whether I care about them. So I am in an environment where they have my attention. And what happens sometimes, you're with other people around and you're talking and it's serious and somebody comes up and just, starts talking to you, which is really inappropriate and impolite, but it happens. And but you have the eye contact, you have your body language, the way you are postured before them, leaning forward a little bit, listening to what they have to say, and you care about them. You care about the person, and you're hearing them, and then but you're also hearing God. You want to have this attitude that Paul has towards the churches, which is, I've heard about you, I know about your problems, I realize you don't like me, some of you, I realize there's carnality, and you are, Galatians were a big disappointment to Paul. But he came back and he ministered to them. And this is the same way with one-on-one. And it is, you do not give up. You are actually knowing God's mind for this person. And even with the most serious trouble, you're able to identify. So we have compassion. Matthew 9:36. Luke 7, there was a woman who lost her only son. They were carrying him to burial. Jesus saw this widow woman, and he had compassion. He stopped the funeral procession, and he came over and he touched the man, and he was raised from the dead because he had compassion. He couldn't see this woman living without her only man in her life who just died, and it tore her up, and he just reversed it because of compassion. Paul, for the Jewish people, Romans 9:2, said, I would go to hell for you. That's how much compassion he had, identification. Jesus in Luke 19:41 wept for Jerusalem. He wept for Jerusalem. He had an amazing amount of compassion and care and identification. And at the same time, he could be very firm, and he was also angry. Mark 3:5, one of my favorite Bible verses. Christ was angry, ripping angry. And we love the many-sided personality of Christ. Very precious to think about it. But compassion is needed in the ministry. Another one that we want to mention here is you are giving honor. Number 2, honor to the person you're listening to. You are respecting them. This is in Romans 12:10, Philippians 2:3, and 1 Peter 2:17. Then number 3, you use a proper or appropriate speech. Appropriate speech. Make your emphasis to understand them. It's 2 Timothy 2:24 and 25. And it's in love, Ephesians 4 and verse 15. How many of you are kind of confrontational in your personality or your manner or your way? How many of you kind of no problem being confrontational? Okay. Could you leave the room right now? No, I'm joking. No, we're happy for you. That's amazing. I wish I was more like that. It's very useful. The bad side of it is that it could be misunderstood. When you are loving, on the other hand, we must speak the truth in love, right? Truth, the confrontational, but in love, in an appropriate way of identifying. Here's a great verse, Ezekiel. I sat where they sat. I sat where they sat. I hesitate putting the verse because I'm not going to get it right. You can look it up. Or Kaylin can. I sat where they sat. I want to sit where you're sitting. So here it is. I'm the counselor. She's heartbroken. Her marriage is falling apart. Bad news. I want to sit where she's sitting and think about what she is feeling, what is happening in her life, and understand her. Have you ever been, another way, put your sister there, put your daughter there, put your son there. Sometimes when I do that, I could start crying. If this was my son talking to me, my son has these problems. My daughter has these problems. Then it helps you identify. Okay. See, 3, what? 15, thanks a lot. And then, that's good. We'll leave that, and then we'll finish up and just go back to Paul and the churches. And this is what we could say with his ministry. He's the counselor. He's getting God's mind. and he's building them up, and there is hope. And this is the great way of thinking about being with people. Okay, let me finish with this. We'll take our break. Okay, here it is. Clara, we told the story, okay. He will not come here. He's spending the money, he's drinking, he's sleeping with another woman. I am finished. I have no interest in this guy. And so she unloads her problem. You're sitting there listening and you care. So what are you going to say? You're going to say, I realize these are very real problems and there's a lot of pain. And I realize what you're going through, and I'm very happy to listen to you. And I want you to say, and you got it. I'm just telling you the attitude. Just talking about the attitude, and it is this. Clara, do you know? And this is the part of the woman that she has a capacity for God. And this is where you want to touch that. Do you know? Okay, we're looking at 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, but you know that you might be living 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 more years in your life. Do you know that God has allowed this to happen? Do you realize that that God is working? And there's something in this picture that both of us want to find. I want you to realize what God has for you in this terrible situation. And this is, I think, an amazing approach to counseling. And yes, we will talk about the problems. Yes, I want to meet Marty. Yes, we can. But let's for a minute go deeper here. Do you know that God has a very real purpose for your life and that he has a plan? And can I share with you a few things? And I don't want you to hear this mechanically, and I don't want you to think that I'm just giving you a formula. I don't want you to have any false hopes. But I want you to be rooted and grounded in Christ himself. And that actually there is something in this that is really, actually God is in it. God is in this. I mean, you listen, but I mean, this is where I believe many believers, they look for the solution to their problem on this level. And what they really need is a ministry of Christ on another level. So when they go out the door, they actually feel they have hope. It might not ever be solved, and there might be a divorce even. But I realize I have hope that Christ is being ministered to me, that I am understanding and receiving. And this is a very important part of the Christian life, is an impartation of Christ's mind to people. This is how Paul ministered to the churches. And that's all I want to say right now, tonight, in finishing here. This is how he ministered to the churches. He took very serious, difficult problems, and he ministered Christ to them. He ministered grace, he taught them faith, he forgave, he instructed, and he essentially believed that the church could manifest the glory of God. That's amazing. And I think if I didn't have this way of thinking, this biblical, very solid way of thinking with Christ, then I don't know what I would do when I hear some problems. I would just say, oh, I can't, it's like, this is, and the word, who has another dimension in this world where that we actually believe in a living God that is able to visit us in our trouble and give us guidance and counsel in life. It's like amazing. There are drugs and there are different therapies and different ways that people deal with problems, but this is a very unique and a very beautiful ministry to people. Okay? So counselor, counselee, some things when we learned about it tonight. And that's it. Come back in 10 minutes for Pastor Lanch, and we'll hear some real hard-hitting, oh yeah, hard-hitting marriage difficulties and solutions. If you got stomach, come back. If you don't, so there'll be counseling available after.